leave your cares aside when you come to join this time. Do not leave your pain, your sorrow, or your joys. Instead, bring them with you into this time of acceptance and forgiveness. Place them on the common altar of life and offer them to the possibility of your worship. Come then, offer yourself to potential transformation by the creative process that flows through you and through all life. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. I'm Karen Elliott, and I'll be your worship associate today. This is a welcoming congregation, and we are always working on how to better welcome and care for one another. If this is your first time here, we're so glad you've come. Whoever you are, we welcome you in the fullness of who you are. As we begin, we want to acknowledge that this church occupies land in Huichin, the unceded territory of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people. We understand that we continue to benefit from the seizure and occupation of this land. We acknowledge and embrace our responsibility to take restorative action. We affirm that this is deeply felt and commit our congregation to be in right relationship with Indigenous communities, aligning in solidarity, supporting Indigenous projects, and caring properly for the land. All right. So please take a moment to prepare yourself and your space for our time together today. You might get a candle and a way to light it so you can join in the chalice lighting at home. Now, let us kindle our flames, or the inner flames of our hearts, with these words by Vanessa Southern. We light our chalice, symbol of our faith, for truth, sought through a questioning heart and an attentive mind, and for love, pursued through obstacles inside and outside our own human heart, and for forgiveness and all it entails, the place where truth and love meet and merge. We also pause to remind ourselves of some of the foundations of resilience. We light a candle of courage, a candle of acts of service, a candle of fellowship, and a candle of hope. May we find and cultivate these in ourselves and in one another. Now, Advent asks of us, as Unitarian Universalists, what are we waiting for and preparing for in our own lives and in the life of our world? In this season of long nights, Advent invites us to explore the themes of hope, peace, joy, and love. On this fourth and final Sunday of Advent, we light a candle of love. What love is growing within you this season? May the light of this candle help us bring more love into the world. Now, please join us in singing our opening song, Love Knocks and Waits for Us to Hear. The words will be on screen. Please join with me now. Please join with me now in saying our covenant. Love guides this church. The quest for truth and justice is its common purpose. To give thanks, listen deeply, honor our differences, speak with care, and seek and grant forgiveness. These things we covenant with one another.
invite all the young and young at heart to come up to the steps. And today we have a story called A Circle of Forgiveness. It is a story told by the Reverend Dr. Emily Brault. Now, Dr. Reverend Emily Brault is a Unitarian Universalist chaplain. She works with incarcerated women, so women in a jail up in Oregon. But before that, she worked with youth. She worked with youth that were also incarcerated, youth who were in jail. And when youth are in jail, they're put in something called a juvenile correctional facility. And this is her story. While I was working at a juvenile correctional facility, I met a 15-year-old boy. We'll call him Jeremy. Jeremy was in prison for breaking into a church and stealing money. It was a random church. He didn't know anybody there. He had never gone there. But it was an easy mark, and he needed the money. Who knows what for? Toward the end of his sentence, Jeremy had the chance to participate in something called a Restorative Justice Circle. It turned out that some of the people at the church wanted to meet him. They wanted to hear his side of the story. Why did you do it? Why us? And they wanted to tell their side of the story. How Jeremy affected the church. How he affected the people of the church. I was one of the people who helped Jeremy get ready for his circle. At first, Jeremy didn't understand why the people would be mad at him. After all, he said, it's not like I stole from somebody in particular. It wasn't anybody in particular's money. The church can always get more money. It's not like it's somebody's money. I tried to explain it to him like this. Imagine that you have two piles of money. One pile is for yourself, for the things you want, maybe a bike or a stereo. And the other pile is for your grandpa. Maybe you're saving money for your grandpa because he needs a surgery or he needs glasses. And you've been saving money for him for a long time. So now, imagine those two piles of money, and I'm going to take one of them from you. Which pile should I take? Should I take your money, or should I take the pile of money that you've been saving for your grandpa? Jeremy decided that I should take his money. And when I asked him why, he said, because I can always get those things later, but my grandpa needs my help. Well, Jeremy, I said, when you stole from church, you stole money that people gave so they could help other people. So you didn't just steal from one person. You stole from a pile of money that was meant to help many people. Maybe people like your grandpa. So Jeremy was very nervous about meeting the people that he had stolen from. But he wanted the chance to apologize to them. He was very scared about what they would say, though. Would they hate him? Would they yell at him? He had no idea how they would react. He wanted to apologize, and he had the courage it took to listen to whatever the people of the church needed to say to him. What do you think? Do you think they would yell at him? He was scared. I met with Jeremy the day after the circle. He was so happy and energetic. When I got there, he said, I was really nervous. All these people were there. The pastor was there, and like 5 different people from the church. And we all just went around the table and talked. They told me how I had hurt them and how they were still struggling with feeling safe in their church. Some of the people cried. I felt so bad. I cried too. I told them everything, what I was thinking, why I did it, and I apologized. I apologized for being selfish and for thinking only of me and for never thinking of how I might affect other people. I wish I could take it back. I wish I could live the night over and make different choices, but I can't. All I can do is say, I'm sorry. And after it was over, some of the people gave me hugs. I don't think I've ever cried so much, Chaplain. I can't believe they gave me a hug. And they forgave me. Jeremy was a different person after that. Something changed in him, something big and important. He talked about his experience in that circle for months. He talked to other guys in the prison. He talked about choices and responsibility. He talked about how our actions affect others even when we don't know it. And he talked about how grateful he felt that he had a chance to say he was sorry and start again. I lost touch with Jeremy after he got out, but he will always impress me. I hope that church is transformed by the circle as he was. May we all have the courage to face our hurts with gentleness and hope.
We come now to the time in our service that we make for the things that we're carrying, our hearts, our spirits, the cares and concerns that we are carrying with us. We lift up and hold these joys, these sorrows, and these challenges that we may each be facing. During our time of silence this morning, I invite you to share any joys or sorrows or significant milestones of your own in the comments section. I invite us all to hold these in the compassionate embrace of this community. Let us join now in a time of silence. Please join with me now in the spirit of meditation for this poem by UU minister Peter Friedrichs. I wish I were like the trees who let their leaves go gracefully without regret, or the tumbling stream that flushes the silt to sea, exchanging murkiness for blessed clarity, or the dandelion who bows its head to the subtle breeze, unleashing its future without fear of loss. Instead, I drive white-knuckled, defensive as we were taught, tense and guarded for whatever may come my way. I keep a death grip on my life. If you asked me for my dying wish, it would not be for 10 more wishes. It would be to let go of wishing anymore. Wishing I'd made different choices, that I hadn't hurt you as I did, and to forego these old and dusty grudges that I keep like pictures in a shoebox beside my bed. I long to embrace my life with a lover's touch, or as you would an injured wren, precious, tender, true. Instead, regret and fear, the twin anchors, hold me fast, close in against the shore. Cast off, I hear them call from the open exotic lands my heart yearns for. But the waters in between, my here and theirs, hold unknown hazards, unlike this dark, familiar port. This day, a prayer. To ease my grip on what once was or what is meant to be, that I may find myself content to drift and float upon life's boundless sea. And now let us join in singing a beautiful little piece, I Know This Rose Will Open.
Our Unitarian Universalist faith draws from many sources, including humanist, Christian, and Jewish teachings and wisdom from other traditions. But the first source of our faith is our personal experience. In my early 30s, I had a difficult year living in India. I returned and started work with a somatic therapist, wanting to work physically, below words. After some time, we consulted her own teacher. As I stood before him, he surveyed me, and among other things, pronounced that he could see in my body that I was someone who held grudges. Well, much as that made me squirm inwardly, I suspected there was some truth in it. I did keep track. This characteristic of mine, I believe, has improved since, thanks to life's rock tumbler and my own determination to grow up. But along the way, I've learned a little about grudges. I think the word grudge works for the small things. However, for the way in which the big wrongs done to us can sink in their claws, betrayal, abandonment, breach of trust, we need to look deeper than the word grudge. Which brings me to forgiveness. To me, the Calvinist Protestant concept of forgiveness feels transactional in nature. We earn forgiveness. I forgive you if you say you're sorry, clean up your act, etc. And it's a transitive action. I forgive you. This may be true with the smaller things, the ones we can apologize for or hold a grudge about. I'm sorry I didn't remember to call you on your birthday. I know it means a lot to you for me to do it, and I screwed up. Please forgive me. But for the big transgressions, forgiveness is more mysterious. I was once told that when there's a harm that's been done you that you can't forgive, a big wrong, it's like you're carrying around a hot coal grasped in your hand, and forgiving someone is like finally opening your hand and letting go of it. A powerful image. But in my own life, I haven't found the process of forgiving working like that. For me, when I've been grappling with a really egregious harm done to me, a betrayal, say, what we conventionally call forgiveness only develops below the level of my conscious will. Slowly, very slowly, and organically over time. Nothing quick about it. What I am doing up at the conscious level is working hard to better understand what happened and to develop spiritual practices that will ground my feelings of belonging and worth in something more trustworthy than another human. This is the work I need to do. But the development of forgiveness itself feels subterranean. My own experience is that that kind of forgiveness, when it emerges, feels just like mercy. It's like a bath to rest in, and there's room enough for both of us. That kind of forgiveness may never reach a transitive moment of, I forgive you for what you did. It might reach a moment of, we did the best we could. I know it provides me with peace. And I also know that I may never be entirely free from the original anger and pain, which I liken to a psychic cyst hidden somewhere inside that, when triggered, when agitated, bursts and floods me with its wretched old contents. Still, with the big hurts, year by year, it's as though I can feel the mercy growing. This is a blessing. This is better than dropping a hot coal. It's a gradual immersion in the great benevolence that I seek to know more about. Thank you.
It is so good to be here with you today during this holiday season and during all of these life journeys that we're on. So a little bit of a content warning for today's service, which I typically don't do the super heavy topics that need the content warning, but today I'll be talking about suicide in a few different ways in this sermon, but I feel like it is an important topic to talk about, both because it is this taboo that we avoid talking about, and because depression and mental health issues are challenges that folks face throughout the year, but often even more particularly as the daylight grows short and during holiday seasons when it seems like all we're allowed to talk about is happy stuff, but always there is other stuff going on too. So that's also why I chose the overall topic of forgiveness for today. So the story that I am opening with touches on a couple different issues. It is from the Sun Literary Magazine, from one of my absolute favorite sections in that magazine, which isn't any of the planned sections. Instead, it is from when the readers of the magazine are given the topic in advance, and they write in their own stories about it. So this topic was about tattoos, and I think you'll really love this story also. The crouching, muscled man studied the line of my arm in silence under bright fluorescent lights. After some final discussion of the font and the size, we were ready. He cleaned the area with orange antiseptic and told me to look away if I felt faint. Getting a tattoo was nothing like how I'd pictured it. Apparently, how I pictured it didn't involve intense pain and seemingly endless discomfort. When I felt confident I wasn't going to black out, I turned to look. I thought he must be on the eye by now, but he was still looping the capital F. I had been staring at my wrist for days, on the subway, in bed at night, desiring a mark there for all to see. When he finished it, it was just as I'd imagined. The artist didn't ask me whether there was a story behind the tattoo. Maybe he never asks. But I put it there because I wanted to explain it, and I have, over and over. People often ask, "Hey, what's your tattoo?" By now I should have a casual and rehearsed answer that doesn't make the other person feel awkward. Instead, I blurt out, "My father killed himself, so I got this." I wish I could tell them that grief comes out in strange ways. I wish I could explain I wanted to make sure I didn't forget, not the tragedy, but my decision to let it go. Every day the word inked on my wrist catches my eye. Forgiven, it says. I'm still working on making it true. Now, none of these is an easy topic. So I want to touch on the topic of suicide first before we delve into today's theme of forgiveness. It's hard whenever we experience or even just hear of a suicide completed by someone we know. And by the way, that is the better terminology. It's not committing a suicide. We've moved away from that terminology a long time ago. It is completing a suicide. Celebrity and high-profile suicides end up touching the emotions of a lot of people. And they're a reminder that suicide is most often the result of mental illness, not sadness or having a hard life, and that folks of all sorts of different means face it. Living with bouts of mental illness can be a hard slog. Medications take a while to figure out. Sometimes a medication works fine until suddenly it doesn't. The physical changes that come, frankly, at any time, but especially in midlife and then as the body ages further, can make living with mental illness or chronic pain even harder. And as many know, one's body can change so quickly, feeling fine one day, but terrible the next. Suicides are hard to comprehend for most of us. For those of us who've been to that edge, hearing of other suicides can bring it back. So I'd like to extend some extra care and love for those with depression or other difficult diagnoses, and I encourage us all to extend that love and that grace to folks. Be gentle with yourself on the hard days. Enjoy the good ones, and please don't ever give up. If it begins to feel overwhelming, there are folks who can help you with that burden and help with remembering reasons for living. There are folks you can reach out to. And I'm happy to always be reached out to for that reason. So our main theme for today is forgiveness. Now, you might be wondering, why are we talking about forgiveness? I'm guessing it's not something any of us jumps out of bed excited to think about every day, right? It's certainly not something that readily comes to mind during the holiday season, although given the many challenging family dynamics that many of us face that come out especially during the holidays, you gotta wonder why it doesn't come up more. And the word forgiveness itself, it's another taboo word, just like suicide is. I've frequently even heard it referred to as the F word. Taboo, one that we definitely do not want to talk about. But the reality is that forgiveness is an important thing, and even a vital one. Our relationships and our connections are crucial for us, and achieving reconciliation in those relationships as well as with ourselves is a core human need. Now, it's hard to talk about forgiveness without talking about its corresponding issue as well, apologies. Now, apologies are entirely different from forgiveness, but they're still related. Maybe cousins, first cousins, second cousins, third cousins, they're related, but cousin-ish maybe. They're fused in my mind, and I'm guessing they're fused in other minds as well. I think it comes from being taught as a child that when someone says they're sorry, that's when you say you forgive them, right? And I guess there's value in teaching the words and the courtesy, but it doesn't really match the reality of these concepts as they play out in our lives. Apologies can diffuse tensions, though, and repair relationships in other ways. I remember really experiencing the power of apologies when I was working as a church directory photographer. Now, that was a fun job. It was a high-energy, high-speed job with my being held accountable for a wide variety of things that, frankly, were outside of my control. I remember one day in particular when I was setting up for photography in a Catholic church with an older building and older electrical systems. The instructions about power needs really hadn't had any attention paid to them, And when I went to test my equipment as I was getting ready to start, I managed to blow the fuses for the entire building. So rather than starting on time, I was running around for extra extension cords to run different pieces of equipment into different buildings so the power needs could be sufficiently distributed across this older system. Makes sense, right? Well, the priest was not pleased at all about the late start. And as he was literally yelling at me about this, I was trying to explain about power needs and fuses, and he just couldn't hear. So I ended up just apologizing profusely, trying to conceal the fact that I was talking through gritted teeth the entire time. But to my utter surprise, that's all he needed. He just needed to hear my apology, and he was perfectly fine after that. Time and time again, since then, I've been amazed at the power of an apology to diffuse a situation. And sometimes I'm even delighted that I get to apologize for something that is my fault. Forgiveness, though, is a different kind of diffusing. While apologies can diffuse tension between people, forgiveness is much more of an internal thing. It is a shift within ourselves, a shift of perspective and of letting go, an emotional shift that comes from deep within. So let's start before the forgiveness happens, when we're in, let's call it a state of not forgiving. We've got a grievance. We've got something that didn't happen the way we wanted or needed it to that has offended us at some significant level. This is, we might call, a grievance incident. Then the grievance incident gets built over time into a grievance story. Now this is where things can unfold in some different ways, with how this story is built and how it unfolds. Often, of course, the story takes on a life of its own and engages in endless replays and cycling in our head, with each replay bringing on its own sting. Forgiveness isn't just a bunch of words like we may have been taught as kids. Forgiveness is both a decision, it's a process, it's a commitment. It's a way to acknowledge hurts in the past and commit to not let them hurt us anymore. It's a way out of feeling like a victim and instead feeling more in control of one's feelings and one's reactions. Forgiveness is about letting go of the memories that continue to have power over us. And really, forgiveness is that internal thing, a shift that happens inside rather than something between two or more people. So there are a couple different methods for engaging with these grievance stories. The first I'm going to share with you comes from the book A Forgiveness Journal by Kristen Robertson. So it's a 4-step method. Step 1 of her method is to identify and name your feelings in your grievance story. Now at the surface, this may seem like an easy step, but the fact is, it can be difficult to see the nuances and complexity in our feelings, especially in an inflamed situation, and especially when we have become so entrenched with the story building up and turning out the way it is. Also, acknowledging the feelings underneath of our presenting feelings can be hard too, like finding the part of the iceberg that's underwater when the part above the water is so much easier to see and name. Step 1 of identifying and naming the feelings leads into step 2, naming any unmet needs that our feelings are pointing towards. These 2 steps, that of naming feelings and unmet needs, are also a core part of the nonviolent communication method, NVC, which is based on Gandhi's philosophies. But of course, even as hard as they are, steps 1 and 2 are easier than the other steps. Step 3 is about changing one's viewpoint and seeing other perspectives, perhaps ones that may be less reactionary, identifying different motivators and triggers and activators within ourselves. And all of this ultimately, as we go through that process, leads to step 4, letting go of the grievance entirely. Kristen Robertson's book is in a journal form that leads you through each of these steps. So the steps were identifying and naming one's feelings in the grievance story, naming unmet needs and unmet feelings, changing one's viewpoint, seeing from other perspectives, and finally letting go of the grievance entirely. So I also use another method to talk about forgiveness in the grief recovery work that I do. First, we work on truly centering the idea of forgiveness as that shift within ourselves. So in this context, what I define forgiveness as is giving up the hope of a different or better yesterday. Giving up the hope of a different or better yesterday. It doesn't have anything to do with the other person. It's about reforming our own sense of well-being, nothing more and nothing less. So in this method, one identifies the grievances that we're holding on to, the grievances and the burdens we're carrying, often related to our relationships with a person. We identify those burdens and the resentments, then make statements of forgiveness, which we then speak, witnessed by someone else who is also doing that work, and we can trust and are something that we can hold on to. Now, we all know there isn't a magical forgiveness wand that will just magically make forgiveness happen, make our resentments and our burdens vanish. Although I bet I'm not alone in wishing that there was. You with me? Oh, yes. It is a process, and it is a commitment. It's about reminding ourselves that we want to let go, and then being stubborn about reminding ourselves that we want to let go. At least that's how it works for me. And now, of course, there's a reason folks call it the F word. Forgiveness is hard because letting go of just about anything is hard, especially things that we feel, strongly about. And also the concept of forgiveness gets caught up in a number of things too. And before I get much further, I want to be clear about what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not condoning someone else's action. It's not about excusing it or accepting it or changing the past so it didn't happen or did happen in a different way. It is also not about forgetting anything. These are other things entirely, and things that we don't need to have our well-being wrapped up in. Forgiveness is quite simply about committing to ourselves that we are letting go of the emotional pain. Forgiveness is giving up the hope of a different or better yesterday. I bet we're each holding on to a number of things we would be better off letting go of. I sure am. And some of those things I'm carrying are things that I tend to call the unforgivables. But I'd like to challenge you to consider that those unforgivables don't exist. Remember, it isn't about condoning something or forgetting it. It's about letting go of the burden, letting go of the hope that it would have in the past happened differently. That's all. Now, even with all of that said, some folks still might not be able to grapple with the F word. I get it. For those folks, and myself about some things, there's an alternate statement that I teach that you can use instead. Instead of saying, I forgive this thing that happened, instead, here's the statement. I acknowledge this thing that happened that hurt me, and I'm not going to let it hurt me anymore. I acknowledge this thing that happened that hurt me, and I'm not going to let it hurt me anymore. That's how we're talking about forgiveness anyway. I acknowledge this grievance, and I'm not going to let it keep hurting me. And even if you don't believe that yet, go ahead and try to say it. Try to embrace it and remind yourself of it over and over. After all, letting go can take a while. Now, preaching a sermon like this brings up another question, one that I've grappled with on a regular basis. Why are we talking about this in church? Why is this a spiritual issue? Because it seems much more like an emotional one than anything else. Believe it or not, this question is often hard to answer. Part of the reason is that there are so many interconnections between the trio of mind, body, spirit that make up each one of us. In fact, it's hard to talk about any one part of that trio in isolation. They are just too interconnected. And there are many emotional issues that have a strong spiritual element, and spiritual issues that have a strong emotional component. And the question of what spiritual means is a huge, juicy question. But let's hold on that one, because we'll be here for hours if I get started on it. We'll go there someday, though, don't worry. What I'm grappling with is naming the spiritual needs of adults, the needs and support for our spiritual journeys. And of course, one of the challenges of doing this in such a way that is inclusive for a multi-religious, multi-belief community. I admit I'm also challenging myself to name this as one who identifies as a humanist, but wants to include many beliefs, both beside my own perspective and also to challenge my own perspective. But here's the thing, in every list I have found of spiritual needs, as well as the lists that I've created, the topic of forgiveness appears in every single one of them. While it is deeply emotional work, it is also a core spiritual need. To be able to let go of these burdens, to be able to find peace and rest for our spirits and for ourselves. This is deep work, it is necessary work, and it is spiritual work. My wish for you is that you can be courageous in your journey towards letting go of the things you don't need to be burdened with, and that you can be stubborn in your commitment to do so. May it be so.
As we commit together to making this a loving community, we also take time to remember that UUCB needs our gifts and our support. We invite you now to make an offering. Each week, half our offerings are shared with a good neighbor organization that needs our financial support. And we hope you will continue to practice generosity with them during these ongoing difficult times. This month, December, our good neighbor is the Emeryville Citizens Assistance Program, or ECAP. ECAP's mission is to provide food, care, and compassion to those in need in Emeryville, California, and the surrounding Bay Area communities. ECAP serves approximately 300 families and individuals daily, 6 days a week. Offerings of any value are received with true gratitude. Details on how to give electronically will appear on your screen as the offertory begins. Thank you. Please join me in dedicating our offering. We dedicate our offering and ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to create loving community, inspire spiritual growth, and encourage lives of integrity, joy, and service.
It has been so good being here together today. Before we shift to coffee hour and everything that happens after the service on Sundays, I want to encourage you to be on the lookout for both the emails and news for stuff that happens about the church. Check out our church website. And of course, I have a few announcements this morning. Okay, the one less exciting one, as many folks have pointed out to us, the church phones are down. We're working on it. We can't even get to voicemail right now. We appreciate your patience and understanding, but yes, we know they're down, and just please bear with us as we're figuring it all out. And we hope that you can, it's Christmas Eve this week. So Christmas Eve will have online services. They'll be streamed at 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. this Friday, Christmas Eve. And we are going to have a Christmas Eve holiday open house here at the church. So from 10 to 2 on Friday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. There will be emails going out, but just so you can plan. We'll have a number of different activities going. We will have the candle bays set up here in the sanctuary so you can come in here, light a candle, enjoy some peaceful holiday music. And there will be other stuff going on too, including our holiday labyrinth, which will actually be set up all week. So you can either come and walk the labyrinth on Friday during the open house, 10 to 2, or anytime Monday through Thursday, 11 to 4 is when you'll be able to come and do it then. So that's a good time to walk our holiday labyrinth. Come by on Christmas Eve in the morning, early afternoon. Services Christmas Eve, 5 and 10. All right, so now we've got our closing song, an absolute favorite of many, many folks, How Could Anyone? The words will be on screen. How could anyone ever tell you, including yourself, that you are anything less than beautiful and amazing? Love surrounds each of us. Be assured that you are beautiful and whole no matter what anyone else thinks or says, or even what you think. May this assurance and our love be with you as you go forth from this time. Go with peace, with love, and with hope. And remember, you are never all alone. Blessed be.